Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Big Apple Film Festival. We're here with Menhaj Huda. We're going to be talking about directing episodic, just directing in general, and he'll give a bio on his path, how he got here, and talk a little, it's a Q&A, so hopefully we have questions for him about directing. And so I guess let's get started. Welcome, Menhaj.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Bangladesh. I moved to the UK at a young age and grew up there. And I did very well at school. I studied engineering at Oxford and then decided to take a slightly different path. And I had, decided to go into television. Actually, my first taste of TV was a summer I spent in Los Angeles after I graduated. And I ended up working at the Fox TV studios as a page. And that really gave me a taste of what the working environment of a TV studio would be like. And I kind of caught the bug, went back to the UK, trained as an editor, and I was very much into the music scene that was happening in the late 80s, early 90s at that time. And so I trained as an editor and started working in music videos, which is what I wanted to do. I think I didn't really have any aspirations to be a director at that time. I knew very little about it, and I wasn't sure what the job really entailed. But I had some success early on in my career because a friend of mine wanted me to come up with some ideas for a TV show, and we were both very young. And I'd come up with this idea for a show, which basically was looking at the sort of the house music rave scene that was exploding throughout the UK at that time. And we pitched this idea to Channel 4. It got picked up by some random series of events. They gave us some money to make a pilot. They loved the pilot and said, we're going to give you a series and you're going to direct it and you're going to produce it. So 4 years out of college, I had my own TV series on Channel 4. And that was like, at that point I was thinking, oh, should I go to film school to learn more about this? And then suddenly I was in at the deep end with this show. And that was the beginning of my directing career. And then I had to learn very quickly. I was an editor by then, so I had my editor's hat on. And so I learned very quickly how to essentially collect images and sounds to put together in the cutting room to make what I wanted. And then really by reading and watching, I started learning how to direct and talking to producers mainly. So the first few years of my career, I worked mainly in like music videos and music TV, and did a bunch of non-scripted shows. And then as I started working in commercial and advertising, directing that, which was essentially, I think in the 90s, was like, certainly in the UK, it had a very high status in terms of creativity. There was ads that were being made that were considered pieces of art, so that was my aspiration, was to work in advertising. And I did a bunch of commercials at that time, but that was really where I started working with scripts and actors. And then that followed naturally on to doing a short film, which ended up being with Film 4, because I'd been doing a lot of work with Channel 4 at that time. And then that short film basically changed my career into scripted. And each, all that progress that I made through the different formats, if you like, I was kind of building up my kind of portfolio of like what I liked and what I didn't like and what kind of filmmaking I liked. And so by the time I got to make my first short film, it was very much influenced by the techniques and things like that had been experimenting with when I was doing music videos and commercials and stuff like that, because I really enjoyed that kind of experimental filmmaking. And I'm not talking about in terms of necessarily non-linear storytelling and stuff like that, but just more what you can do with the camera, what you can do in post, and how you can make things look. So then, having started off like that and learning on the job, I didn't shadow any directors for scripted. Again, got thrown in at the deep end. I had representation from ICM in the UK at that time, and they started putting me up for like scripted TV dramas and feature films. And my first TV drama was a show called Queer as Folk, written by Russell T Davis. And, that went really well. And then I ended up making a movie, which was actually my first short film got selected as one of 6 shorts to watch out for, filmmakers to watch out for in the year 2000. And that was actually showcased in New York and in LA. So there were 6 short films that were showcased in New York and in LA. And that was the kind of reintroduction of my relationship with Hollywood. And so, I got signed up by ICM in the US at that time, and just, started that journey of like film and TV. And so even from back then, I was like looking at working in the US. I was attached to a movie that I developed. And at that time, the focus was very much on features, and TV was not really as high status as it is today. So I ended up making a movie back in the UK called Kidulthood, which won me a Best Debut Director award at the British Independent Film Awards, which is quite a big deal. And then I think beyond that, I was really trying to make the move to the US, and lots of life things happened which prevented me from making the move at that point. And I finally moved back in 2017. And by then, the industry had shifted from film to TV. There was a lot more focus on that. There was a lot more work in that. And so I just found myself in the UK being quite frustrated, not being able to do the kind of work that I would enjoy doing and felt was the right kind of work for me. And now that I'm here, I have ended up working a bunch of CW shows. I've made some great TV movies for Lifetime. I just made one for Paramount, which we've just found out this week that it's been nominated for 3 NAACP awards. So I'm now out there trying to get people to vote for it. It's unusual that you get to vote for it, so it'd be great to get everyone to vote for me for this award and see if we can actually win one. It's not every day that you get to make a film, and not every day you get nominated, and certainly not every day that you get the general public to vote for it. So I hope we can create something special for us to win.
Is that Heist 88, the film you're talking
Yeah,
about?
that's it. The one behind me.
Yeah. So that's something that you directed, and do you write it all, or do you just mostly
You know what? It's I do write, but I've worked with so many amazing writers that my instinct is not to write. I come up with stories, and I try and find writers who I enjoy working with, who I think are a lot more talented than myself, that I like to collaborate with. So I've optioned scripts and work with the writers and to get it to where I want. But I just know that I have done a bit of writing, last year, and sorry, not last year, it was actually the year before. I did a couple of writing courses when I knew that I was going to have some downtime, and just trying to push some of my own projects forward. So I do write. I just don't rate myself as a writer as yet. I hope that I get to work with some of my own projects with writers who elevate my work to the level that it needs to be. So.
okay? And then, so when you started out with doing music videos, what was your role on those videos? Was it camera? What was
So
the
yeah, I started off just as an editor in post, and then I started working with a director and essentially like producing for him. We had a little company going. We were just, out there making low budget and then maybe not so low budget videos. But we were doing a lot of everything was actually not everything, but most of it, I'd say 80% of it was shot on 16 mil at that time. And we were making probably like one video a month. So that was kind of like my film school in terms of really going through the process of writing a script or being involved in the development of the script and then breaking that down, doing the budget, doing a schedule, pitching it, winning the job, then going out and prepping and then shooting. And then I would end up doing the edit. And then, just doing that over and over again and doing all the post and like the telecine, what you can do with that and what the limits of that are. And at that time, the visual effects thing was kind of so expensive that it was not really something that we incorporated into the process. And now it's obviously, everything is acquired digitally. It's much easier to incorporate effects and things, with a touch of a button. As we can all see, you can just on Instagram, you can put filters on and stuff like that, which, would take us hours to do in those days in terms of finding a look in post. But now it's done so quickly. Yeah, so that was my role at that time. And I think that was really where I learned a lot. And then when I was doing a lot of those non-scripted shows, I would do a lot of self-shooting. So I'd go out with these high-8 cameras. Even if I had a crew, I would shoot my own shots as well, to do that. And again, that allowed you to experiment and explore things, and kind of build up your knowledge base of what aesthetics that you like and enjoy, and just having a real understanding of what lenses can do and what the limitations of lenses are and what you can do with lights and things like that. It was sort of a way to, and I actually had a 16 mil camera. I still have that. I have like this, it's like a camcorder. It's like a Canon Scopic, which you can self-load. It automatically loads 100-foot loads. I used to use that as well on some of these non-scripted shows. I convinced them to give me the budget to do that. And so I get to play with film as well. And again, experiment with the looks of it on these shows, which was doable on music shows and those kind of projects. So yeah, that's kind of how I started out. Yeah, I'll let you ask me some questions.
So yeah, about starting out. So like, we're kind of talking about how to get a job as like to get hired to write for a thing, but I would imagine you have to develop a whole strategy and portfolio and like, so for someone who's never directed before, who wants to get to the promised land of, directing for TV, what steps would you kind of start and take to get yourself there?
I think, well, I'd say there's several ways. This is, my observation of like moving from the UK to the US. The way things work here is, I think if you are working on a long running show and you are like working on the crew as an AD or a script supervisor or an editor in post, if you are on a show, let's say something like I don't know, I mean, you're in New York, so something like Law and Order. If you come in as a trainee editor and then you work your way up to an editor, there will be a point, if you've done like 4 or 5 seasons of working on the same show, there will be a point at which if you want to direct, there'll be an opportunity for you to direct an episode as somebody who actually knows the show really well. I know people since I've moved here who are editors on like The Walking Dead, or editors on other long-running shows, and within the camp they were given the opportunity to direct an episode. And once you've got that first episode of a show, and you've got the backing of your team to create something that's kind of significant, it's not just it's not as tough as like having a one short film, you know, or a couple of short films. It's like it's an actual episode that went out and you went through the system. That is actually has a lot of value. And so, you know, that gets you into the DGA. Then you're, you know, if the episode goes well, then you have the opportunity probably to come back and do another one for the same show. You know, what I've discovered with other directors, that then they get to a point where they're trying to break out of that genre, because they don't really just want to do that one show or that one kind of show. And so they have to find a way of convincing other people to let them do that. And also some of these directors have gone on to onto the sort of the programs for like female directors and diverse directors, to the directing programs that now are you know, were developed in conjunction with the DGA, and they now essentially every studio has them, whether it's ABC, NBC, CBS, Disney. They all have directing programs which are essentially like gold dust if that's the career that you want, because once you get into those programs, and Warner Brothers obviously is the biggest one, once you get into those programs, which, you know, I was in this kind of middle ground, because I also already had a ton of experience by the time I moved to the US. So I was not like a novice director, but at the same time, I was actually quite happy to go in and do these programs if it meant I was going to be locked into a system. So a lot of the people I met for those basically said, no, you know, we don't think you should be on these programs. You should actually start working. And fortunately for me, you know, I got to get working with Warner Brothers, and hope to continue doing more with them. But I do know that once you get into these programs, you're kind of built into the alumni of the program. So there's a sort of system to help you move up the ranks within that studio, and you know, they've invested in you, so they want to recoup some of that for themselves and make sure that you're directing their shows initially before, you know, you spread your wings and go to the other camps. So those are the ways that I think you know, there are people that I think have like made a short film and got onto the radar of filmmakers, or they've made a movie, an indie movie that has done, you know, has gotten some note, and that gives you access. But, you know, I think certainly in the early days of TV, the TV explosion, there were a lot of feature film directors that were brought in to direct episodic. And I think from both sides, it didn't really work out, because, you know, working on episodic is very different to making a movie as a director. You know, you're like one or two episodes, maybe of a season of 20 or 10 episodes. And it's really the showrunners' medium. They're the ones who select the directors that they want, because that's the way they want their shows to look, or they have a look for the show and they want you to essentially deliver the vision that they have. So what I found working in that system was, it took me back to when I was working in advertising, and I thought that that was, you know, the sort of equivalent of how episodic TV works. Because when you're working in advertising, which is still the same to this day, you have an ad agency who comes up with the concept, they convince the client that they this is the right project for them, and then they come and find the director to help get it made in the vision of the agency and the client. So it's a very collaborative process, and it can be very frustrating because you feel like you get the idea and you want to create something creative that's going to blow everyone away. But the bottom line is these guys are investing a lot of money because they need this ad to sell X number of whatever product. And you have to kind of trust that they kind of have that understanding as well. So as much as you can bring your creativity in advertising to selling a product, at the end of the day, that's not really my forte to make those choices and decisions. So in the same way, when you come to do episodic TV, you have a showrunner, you have a studio network who basically have this show that they've been either running or they've created, and you're jumping in at the very last minute, if you like, to steer the ship. And what they don't want is for somebody to steer the ship off the path that they imagine that it's going to go. And they want you to keep everyone happy. They want you to deliver something that's really outstanding and really has impact on the audience and grabs the audience. And I think that process in itself, considering an episode, working on something like The Flash or Batwoman, you're coming in, you have literally like 7 or 8 days to prep. You take those reins and then you get on set. You got 8 or 9 days to shoot, and then you're out, you're done. And then you get like a few days later, you get like 4 or 5 days in the cutting room with your editor. And then you present that to the showrunner, and then they basically do their version, and then it goes up to the network, and you don't get to see it until it basically goes out on TV and it's got your name on it. So that's the reality of working on long-running shows. I've yet to work on an episodic for any of the streamers like Apple or Amazon or Netflix, but certainly in terms of the network shows, that's how it really works. And so you have to be very collaborative. You have to accept that it's not your like somebody was saying, one description was like, you're invited to the kitchen, and you've got to cook a meal, but it's actually got to be done to their recipes. That's kind of how it feels sometimes. And what you want to make sure is that you're not poisoning people like with what you're feeding them. So that's I thought that was a good analogy. So I make it sound really simple and straightforward because it's like a short amount of time. But I do take time sometimes. I pause to think about all the different skill sets you have to do this job as a director that people are desperate to do. It's not something that I myself as a kid imagine, oh yeah, I really want to make movies, I want to be a director. That really, I wasn't that person. I kind of found myself in that position, and I always like for myself as a person to continue on in anything in life as a career, I would want to make sure that I'm good at it, and more importantly that I enjoy it, and because if you can't handle the stress of what this job entails, for me, I would check out, be like, actually, I'll go back to the cutting room because that's kind of my safe space. I love doing that, and I still love doing that, and I could go back and do that anytime. But and still be involved in the industry, but to put yourself like in front of everyone and and have to take the criticism that you will get for you know, whatever you're trying to do, is not for everyone. I'd say, you know, it takes a certain kind of person to accept, and it's very different to writing, because actually writing, you're able to actually just create in a pure form. And I think you're sort of more in the background of when in film in particular, when something gets made, you're sort of less, you absolutely are, you know, writers are like the most important people that I want to work with. But they can, I think, like, be in the background and not take the brunt of, you know, and they can also turn around and say, well, that's not how I imagined it. It's turned out to be something different, you know. And I think that's one of the things about directing that you have to accept, is that it's not always about having this kind of very singular vision of what something's going to be, what a piece of work's going to be. I think you have to let it flow and become something that could be even better than what you had imagined it to be, whether it's an actor that's bringing a performance that you were like, oh my God, this is not what I thought it was going to be, but this is incredible. You know, let's go down this route. Let's not try and make that person act in this other direction that I had imagined would be. I mean, you could try it, but it's like, if something is going really well, you just, you know, my instinct is to go with it, as long as it's not going off the rails. And you know, whether it's the lighting, a DP has come up with a way of lighting a scene that you would thinking, well, that's not exactly how I'd seen it, but this looks beautiful. So let's, you know, let's go with that. And it's making me feel what I want to feel. So all of those kind of things, elements come into it when you've got a huge team of costume, makeup, you know, obviously the performers themselves, the lighting crew, and then same in the, you know, in sound and editing, you know, all of that comes into play. Like, here's the script in its linear fashion. The editor shows you a version where you start at the end and you come, you know, and then you watch it and you're like, oh my God, that's incredible. That's how the creative process works in directing, and you have to be open to that, and you have to have an understanding of that. I think that's the difference. I feel like as a writer, you don't have to do that. You can actually be that a person that just writes the words, that grabs the reader and takes them on that journey, and that's kind of where it ends. But once you then start looking at how to turn those words into visuals, and then you know, feelings of how you want to the audience to feel, then there's kind of like so many possibilities that you have to be open to that, so that you're allowed to create that. And then obviously you also have to keep your producers and your execs on board with you, that you actually are doing something that is actually, you know, is working, and it's helping improve what's already there. And that's also part of the job. It's like being, not just doing it and creating it and going, hey, that's what I think it is, but you've got to convince other people, because they might be like, well, that's not what's in the script. I'm like, yeah, but look at it. Like, tell me that that's not working for you, you know. And if it's not, tell me what part of it is not working. I know it's not exactly what's in the script, but be an audience member and tell me what's not working for you, and then let me see if I can fix that, because I feel like we've got something like really interesting and special here. So it's that sort of ability to stick to your guns and try and you know, you're not going to win every single battle, and there are battles that you're going to choose and others you're going to let go, and that happens, I would say, a lot in episodic, because you know, you've got like a different you've got like a sandbox which is smaller than you would have on a movie, but you can still play, you know, you can do things and suggest things, and ultimately it's the showrunner's decision and choice whether they want that included or not. And the more, and you just have to have that thick skin of like, hey, no problem. I'll, you know, if you don't like that idea, I'll put it back in my sleeve and I'll use it for something else, you know. But you can't take it personally, because it's like, it's not your show. And, you know, if you're a pilot director, that's different, because then you're being asked to come up with that vision, you know, in conjunction with the showrunner. Um, and, you know, hopefully one day I'll get to do a pilot and actually create the look and style of the show. But I think an episodic, you know, when you're coming in beyond the pilot, you know, some shows I've done have like a lookbook, and they're like, yeah, this is the lookbook for this season. This is what we're trying to make things look like. So you just absorb that and try and see if you can find those kind of moments within your script. You know, not always going to be possible, but you do your best. But essentially, you know, you're working with people who most of the time have been on the show longer than you have, and so you listen to them and take their advice. And if you feel strongly about something, then you make your point, and if they decide to go with it, then great. If not, you put it away and continue on, and you know, give it your best shot and keep the energy up and make everyone happy and try and get the best out of everyone.
Okay, Deirdre has a question. You can unmute yourself and fire away.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you, Menhaj. I wanted to say, of course, congrats on your nomination for the NAACP award. And I wanted to ask which category we could vote.
Yeah, so it's for the best movie for television and limited series.
Okay, I'm just writing
And
that
also,
down.
so that's the first one, that you actually can only vote for the two: best actor for TV movie. That's Courtney B. Vance. And we have a third nomination for the best writing, but I don't think that's open to the public. So
Yeah. You spoke a lot about your process, and I was really curious about, I wrote it down, basically like in an episodic, how are you bringing kind of a unique vision? How are you putting your stamp on it? Is that even the goal here? Is it, like you said, taking the recipe, don't food poison anyone? You answered a lot when you said, like, okay, there are people who have been here for a long time. The showrunner has to say yes. People want to protect, I guess, this world and these characters. So I guess I still have a few remaining questions. One being, is the showrunner speaking on behalf of the writers, and the writers not having, sometimes I know it can be both, but are the writers not speaking with you, the director, before or during that process of you
oh no, they're with
preparing?
you. So you if you start, when you arrive, before you arrive, you get the script, and hopefully like the scripts beforehand, so you can get a sense of how the episode fits into like a sequence of episodes, you know, because your stories are going to be linked to what's happened before. So you get a bunch of scripts to read maybe a week or two before, and then like 2 or 3 days before, you'll get your script, so you get to read that. So by the time you actually land, the writer, well, this was happening before COVID, but now it's happening back again. It stopped happening during COVID, but now it's back again, where the writer would actually be with you during the whole prep. All the meetings that you have for the set design, the props, the costumes, makeup, all of those meetings, the writer is with you, and it's with the showrunner involved as well. So any ideas that you have, any questions that you have about the script, you get to like iron that out with the writers. You have access to them straight away because they're with you all the time. So you get to ask them, so, you know, I had a question about this, and then they'll explain it. And, you know, that's what I love about this process. So you got the writer with you right there. And then there's, and you might say, well, do you think we could do this with this character? And they'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's run it past the showrunner. And then we would go and pitch it to the showrunner. And the showrunner would go, oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, you know, let's make that amend in the next version of the script. So there's that collaborative process. And sometimes they'll be like, no, we can't do that because this is going to happen in the next episode, or the episode in you know, three down the line. So we can't have that person holding hands with this other person, you know, whatever. So that all of that comes out in that process, and you have to just respect it and be like, oh yeah, of course, that's fine, you know. And they're like, but they want you to be engaged in that way so that you're being creative with what they've you know, presented to you.
Are you being hired in a way, and I know it can change, just depends on how you were hired, but like in your experience, is it because you have ideas about this show? Do you have any say on what episode you would even get? Or is it like, hey, this show is open to having different directors, or we need someone because this person is predisposed? You have to come in quick and just make it run.
It's a bit of both. I mean, you know, there are directors that will have been there from season one, that they are the tried and trusted directors that they want. And if not, you know, if you're one of the newcomers, you know, they want to give you a shot and see how you do. And that's kind of essentially, you know, the thing about these kind of shows is that there's a lot of politics going on. And, you know, when the show is beginning, the sort of the balance of power is with the showrunners and the creatives. And as the show becomes more and more successful, so by the time you get to season 3, 4, the actors really have the power because they know that the show is successful because they are the stars of the show. And so what you'll find is that there's usually a little shift in balance, and then the actors make those choices and decisions of like, so if they don't like somebody new comes in, they don't like how they're treating them and the questions they're asking them and what they're doing, they might, no matter how good the episode is, they might end up not coming back. So there's all that kind of stuff that goes on. And it's really difficult to explain that to people because it's different on every single show, because you know, you might have the same actors as you had on this show and that show, but it's a different showrunner and it's a different line producer. So that all of that mix, how that works, that sort of chemistry is different on every single show. So some shows you have a showrunner who'll just be like, just go and do your thing, do whatever you want. Other showrunners be like, no, this is how I want this sequence shot. I want you to point the camera here from here to here because I want that in the background. You know, they can be that specific, and everything in between. Like, you know, I've had all of that, and you know, even the script. So like, you know, one of my first jobs after COVID was a show, an episode of something which got shut down as they were going into COVID. So they were supposed to shoot it in the previous season. They didn't shoot it because they got shut down. So that season was ended early, obviously. And then we come back in the next season and they take that script, which was supposed to be filmed in that way, squeeze it into season 3, which doesn't entirely make sense because now they're trying to put this new season. And so you end up with like a pudding of a script where you're like, this doesn't quite feel like it was made for this. And then they explain to you, yeah, because it was supposed to be like this. And then that actor is not coming back. So we had to make it into this. And so you have to just be like, okay, we'll do the best we can. Like, as you know, just you tell me how you see it and I'll do what I can with it. And I'll deliver the best I can. And then, you know, so that you have to not take that stuff too personally. Like, and there are things like that are going to happen, and you've got to roll with it. And what you can't do is just derail everything and be like, I don't get what's happening here. As soon as that's like, you know, or they feel like you're sort of, instead of moving the ship forward, that you're sort of putting the anchor down. They'll bring somebody else in to start, you know, continuing that on. So you have to be mindful of that. There's you know, like I said, there's a lot of different moving parts. the quicker you get your head around that. And that's what I mean. Like the job in itself is much more about the creative of making a film. Like many people can do that and they have an understanding of that. But working in episodic TV requires sort of lots of other skill sets and understanding around like the periphery of the core job to be successful, in my view.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
Carla, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. Just wondering, I don't know if I missed this, but who's your representative? Do you mind sharing who your representative is? Do you have an agent and a manager? And what did you do to acquire your representatives now? I remember you mentioned you did short films, and just curious.
So yeah, so I do have a manager, and he's at Zero Gravity, and then I have an agent. I have an agent, which basically are three people at a company that used to be called APA and now are called IAG, Independent Artist Group. And so when I just made the decision to actually relocate to the US, I had kind of let my US representation go, and so I had to use my UK agents to connect me with agents here. So I came here, did some meetings, and by chance I actually met my current manager, who used to manage a friend of mine as an actor, and she introduced me to him, and we just got on very well. And then he's the one who really like fast tracked me getting an agent in the US, and he reconnected with all the people that I'd met with before, and he introduced me to a couple of other people as well, and then he got me to come back like 2 weeks after I was here, and I had 4 different agents that offered to take me on, and then I had to make a choice of which one I wanted to go to. And
Really nice.
yeah, and
Do you know what you had as far as on your reel, or like did you have a reel or your short film? What do you think attracted the agents the
well,
most?
so by the time that happened, I'm talking like 7 or 8 years ago. By the time, I had already done like 3 movies in the UK. I'd already won this award for it. So people could look at my portfolio of work and see that I've done quite a lot of work. So I've done a bunch of like dramas for the BBC, Channel 4, and ITV, and these are the big broadcasters there, so they could see. Yeah, I hadn't done anything like Downton Abbey that was a big hit in the US, but they could see that the quality of what I had done was up to the standard that they needed to be able to represent me. And I ended up doing my first US TV gig while I was still in the UK, and it was shooting it in London, which made it a bit more straightforward. And that was a show called The Royals, which used to go out on E! Channel. It was for Lionsgate. So that kind of opened my account with them, which is something that I would never have got being a director in the UK with my UK representation. So that was the beginning of that process. I think if you're just starting out and you don't have many things on your reel as a director, then it's important to like go, take your short films and be at festivals and hopefully win an award and get on people's radar for them to try and take you on. I think with shorts, you need at least a sequence of shorts to show reps that you've got what it takes and a voice and the ability to actually complete things and make things and get them done. And I would also encourage people to work in advertising, and you know, you can end up with very cool reels based on either, you know, comedy reels or, you know, comedy scripts and commercials, or you know, visual effects, stylistic stuff, which you know, as long as they have a kind of story within the script, those can help actually get you onto the short film and the you know, that kind of circuit, so that you have a collection of work that they can represent. It's not just one piece. It's much harder to do that unless you've won an Oscar for your first short film, you know, in which case everyone's going to show up, you know, and that's not impossible. So
Awesome, thank you. Can I ask one more thing, Andy?
Sure.
I would just be curious to know, like, being from Great Britain, what do you see that's happening now in the industry as far as, do you think it's becoming more global? Simply because I really like, there's some shows on Netflix like Top Boy that I love, that's British, and I'm noticing like a lot of my American friends really like it, and I'm from Caribbean heritage also. Like, but it's cool to hear that you are here in America, you came from England, you're directing. Like, do you think we're going more in that perspective, like the industry?
look, for me, it's funny. You know, Top Boy is derivative of my movie Kidulthood, so you should definitely check out my film Kidulthood. Without Kidulthood, there would not be a Top Boy. So
No way. Can you put it in the chat, the name again? That
it's
is so
actually available on Tubi right now. So
okay.
it's
Okay.
it's available on Tubi for free, so you should definitely check that out. You know what, I think, you know, if I'm being honest, and this is not a huge audience, but so what I would say is that, you know, I made this film. It did really well. It was an indie film. It had a lot of problems in terms of getting it financed and getting it out, but it came out and it did really well, and it did, you know, give me an outstanding piece of work as a calling card. But beyond that, you know, I was coming back and forth to LA. I was screening it here, and people were like, wow, you know, how come you're not being offered X, Y, and Z? Because this is an amazing film. And it just wasn't happening and for me in the UK. And it took me a little while after that to realize that maybe I was hitting a glass ceiling, that it was time for me to move to the US, where there was a lot more kind of focus on diversity and giving opportunities to different voices. And my instincts were correct. You know, I was on the you know, the equivalent of DGA. It's not as strong. It's not a union. Is an organization called Directors UK, DUK, and I was on the board of that. I was on it for like 3 years. I led the campaign for diverse directors, and you know, I went to a lot of meetings and was really at the forefront of what was happening, and realized after a good year and a half of doing that was nothing's going to change. Like, I just felt like nothing is going to change. There's a lot of talk happening, but and so it was really time for me to make the move to the US, and I'm very, very glad that I've done that. And you know, I would never have had these opportunities there. Now, what's happened since I've moved here is that a lot of the thanks to the exchange rate, and of, you know, due to Brexit and other economic catastrophes in the UK, the exchange rate has gone down the tube, which has essentially made American shows a lot more appealing to go into the UK, to take advantage of their tax credits and to shoot projects there. So now you have like Apple and Amazon and Hulu and all these American streamers are there shooting stuff. And of course, they're demanding diverse directors. They don't want the same old guys that have been doing. They want female directors. They want directors of color. Which the UK has been notorious not to really invest in. So now I'm seeing there's a lot more opportunities for that. Literally, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, you're seeing an uptick of those, and that's kind of making me want to go back and shoot stuff there. But we'll see what happens. I'd rather just be here and carry on doing what I'm doing. But I do have projects that I'm developing, which will shoot in the UK, and as long as they hire me as a DGA director, I'd go back and do stuff for them still. But that's that's really part of the story for me of why I've made the move out here. I'd say the biggest part of it is that just creatively, I love the shows that you do here much more than I do in the UK, and that's really what I want to be doing in the next 10-20 years, and really establishing myself as a sort of a mainstream director, working on. I actually love that. People are very kind of snobbish about the network shows, but I actually really enjoy those. So I'd be very happy just to carry on doing those. And as much as I would love to direct an episode of The Last of Us, or The Mandalorian, hopefully those opportunities will come when I'm ready.
Okay, I guess we have time for one more question. And Deidre, you wanna ask your question?
Yes. First, I want to say sorry for saying your name wrong. Is it Menhaj?
Yeah, it
Instead of-
is.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
I have a million questions. I'm going to limit it to this one, and that is, you kind of mentioned like you like a lot of the shows here. Can you talk about like what, I guess like how are you going about choosing projects? I'm thinking about the fact that yes, like network versus streamers, but also low budget versus the typical budget you would be used to right now being seasoned. How are you choosing the projects that you actually direct?
I think I've been spoiled for choice a little bit, because like everything so far I've been given to read, I've really been into those shows. Like, when I watch them, I've yet to get something where I'm like, oh, I do I really have to do this? And my taste is quite varied. I like stuff that's quite commercial. I'm not into stuff that's too art house. So, that means that I have, especially in the US, there's a lot of things that I could be doing that like, get my interest. So where, I think the one thing that I've been surprised about is I thought that the work that I'd done in the UK would really get me into doing like crime-based dramas, and that Heist is like the first thing I've done, which is a crime-based drama, and that surprised me. I thought I would be doing more of the sort of Chicago PD and Law and Order and that kind of thing, but it just hasn't happened yet. It will do. I'm pretty sure it will.
So truly hypothetically, because I don't have a crime drama or anything like that, and clearly you're a lot more established, but just hypothetically, if someone had a pilot that they were pitching and they want to have like a seasoned director to attach to it, would people go through your agent and ask you that? Or would they meet you and say, hey, I have this thing, would you be open to that? And I'm asking because I just want to know, what is the probability that someone who's seasoned would want to work with people who are not, a network television show?
You would approach the agents, but the way it works is that the show has to be pitched without a pilot script, and if somebody buys the idea of it, the characters and the series arc and what the premise of it is, if they've already bought that, then they're gonna either commission a pilot script or they're gonna read the pilot script, and then if they love that script, then they're gonna buy it and they're gonna pay for it at that point. Now, once that happens, whoever's the showrunner, I don't know if that's going to be you or not, if you're not experienced. There's been many instances where somebody's written a great pilot script and they've been put together with the showrunner, and you know, they've had successful relationships moving on from that. And then there's the other one, you know, the alternative is that they don't have a successful relationship, and the person that's less experienced, who's actually come up with the idea, gets kind of sidelined. And that's happened too. But ultimately, where the director comes in is the choice of the network. And like, so like right now, I've been approached by someone who's a producer. I've found a writer for them. We're all getting on really well. We're creating the idea for a show. I checked in with my agent, and he's like, well, you know, it's great that you're doing this. We can definitely, if you know, do a deal where you're an EP on the project, and we'll try and get you, but you may not end up directing the pilot because the network's going to decide that. So he's trying to be upfront, and you know, obviously they're going to try and get me to do that, but he's preparing me for the reality that may not happen. But because I've kind of helped put the thing together, I'm definitely going to be involved, and I'll have to negotiate with them. And if, you know, if I get the opportunity to sell myself to the network and be like, hey, I know all about this because I helped, they might just go, actually, he's the best person to direct this, so let him do this, right? Instead of bringing somebody else in, you know. So that's how it works. You know, it's not always what you think, like, oh yeah, I'll just find a director and it's going to get sold because I've got this director. It's doesn't necessarily work in that way.
Thank you,
Great.
and good luck.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Menhaj. It's been a great hour. Been very enlightening, and thanks so much. Thanks to all the attendees, and we'll see you later.
Thank you so much.
So long.
Bye.